the save. Spurs stay up. Oh, Reed! Where on earth did he find that one from?
Gyökeres!
Forward through for Krupi. Chance here! Salah for Liverpool. And there finally is the goal. Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header.
In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, EPL Index proudly brings to you the best prediction podcast in the world, A Tad Predictable. Your host, Tadiwa Chanakira.
For Liverpool. And there finally is the goal. Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header.
In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
Hello and welcome to episode 230 of A Tad Predictable. We will obviously be reviewing what has happened in the Premier League this weekend, as well as what happened tonight, where Fulham and Chelsea played at the Cottage, Craven Cottage. Obviously, Chelsea, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen it yet, Chelsea go on to win that game 3-2. There was a bit of a scare there. Chelsea looked comfortable, and then Fulham started to come back. But I think towards the end, Fulham ran out of steam. But thank you all for joining us. Whether you're joining us on YouTube or you're joining us on Twitter or X or Facebook, we do appreciate each and every one of you that is here listening to us. Before we get started, I do want to obviously mention the A Tad Predictable August giveaway for this month. We're giving away a £20 Amazon gift voucher at the end of this month, and getting your name on that wheel is pretty easy. If you join us live for any of the A Tad Predictable episodes during this August, then if you jump into the chat and you hit the like button, you'll be added to the wheel. So as long as you've hit the like button and you've commented in the chat, then you'll be added onto the wheel. If you can't catch the shows live, then no worries there. All you have to do is find any of the A Tad Predictable episodes, obviously on at EPL Index YouTube channel. And during the month of August, if you leave a comment on any of the A Tad Predictable YouTube videos from the month of August, you'll also be added onto the wheel. We'll be spinning the wheel live next week, Monday, on the 31st of August. So definitely go and support the show in that way. Support us at EPL Index. Obviously, this is a channel that is trying to grow. We're trying to bring in more English Premier League fans that just like to talk about the entire Premier League, not just necessarily specific clubs. And sometimes we've seen, especially with mainstream media, that kind of gravitate towards specific set of clubs. But yeah, it gives you guys an opportunity to win. It gives you guys an opportunity to show support to the show as well. We've got a couple of people already on the wheel, so it is getting bigger by the day, and we thank you guys. So yeah, as I said, it's very simple. We'll do the draw, so to speak, or the wheel spin next week, Monday, and you could be one of those people that does go and win that Amazon gift voucher. And then we'll see next month what competition we will have there, what prizes we can give away. We do love giving prizes here on A Tad Predictable. If you're joining us from the earlier show that was on with Lola and Twin Scarlet, that was a good show. A Liverpool fan, Arsenal fan, twin sisters that just get to talk about their favorite clubs and get to battle each other a little bit. I could see Lola was getting a little bit annoyed with Scarlet because obviously, as an Arsenal fan, look at how comfortable they were on the opening day of the season, literally the opening game of the season. And Lola being a Liverpool fan, a lot of questions with regards to what Liverpool are going to do, not just this summer window, but going forward as well. But let's come back to Monday night, because we can head back to Arsenal and Liverpool and all those likes. But I do want to talk about this game that we've just seen, the Chelsea and Fulham game. From a Fulham perspective, it's a home game, it's an opener. You want to make a statement for your home crowd. You want to get them excited. And I thought they did a lot of that in this game. Yes, they go and concede 3 goals. Yes, they end up going and losing the game, unfortunately for them. But I do think is a credit to them that they showed fight after they went down. I thought they took a little bit of time to get into the game, but once they got settled and comfortable and started playing their brand of football, it started to look a bit better. And we saw, obviously, from a Chelsea perspective, I thought it was a very energetic performance. Their pressing, even from the likes of João Pedro, who I think is going to be massive for them this season, was impressive to see. Obviously, Alonso comes with high demands and expectations from his team, not just off the pitch, but on the pitch as well. We know his demands off the pitch, right, in terms of getting the Chelsea job and what he wanted in terms of a structure in place in order for them to be successful. On the pitch, we've seen that same methodology, that same approach, where Chelsea looked more mature in this game. This is something that I've been asking from Chelsea for a couple of seasons now, where they look like an immature club as a whole with how they deal with transfers and how they play on the pitch. This was a bit more of a mature performance, a more controlled performance. I think arguably they've made the biggest claim to be the team that's going to follow Arsenal in terms of trying to challenge them. And obviously later on in the podcast, we're going to go and dive a bit deeper into who are the teams that could potentially challenge Arsenal. But the worry for Chelsea, and we'll get to those worries later on in the show, I think are quite glaring. I want to dive into more of the teams that we spoke about as we were heading into the season, the teams that we were showcasing, that when we were previewing, we were saying, guys, look out for these teams. They're looking impressive. And you can see on the screen, it's come up, it says the B teams. And these are the teams, not to say that they are the B teams in their squads, right? I'm talking, of course, of the likes of Brentford and Brighton specifically. The teams who start with the letter B, and the teams who, when it comes to philosophies, when it comes to a system from on the pitch to off the pitch, to clubs that are run incredibly well. I don't think you can find two clubs better run in English football than Brentford and Brighton, and for differing reasons, but they know what they want, they know how to execute it, and they execute it to a high degree. And we've seen, for example, with the likes of Brighton, when Chelsea have come and taken all of their staff, we've seen with Brighton, with the amount of players that they've had to offload, made a pretty penny from it, but had to offload. And we've seen from Brighton, they lose a Thomas Frank, and you wonder, is that it for them? And they keep chugging along. The sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts themselves with both of these clubs. And they've started the season the way they came into the season. You look at their pre-seasons, both of them were excellent in pre-season, in my opinion. From a Brentford perspective, they were scoring goals for fun. That transitioned into the season when we saw them against Tottenham. And boy, do we need to talk about Tottenham in this episode. I think it was comforting for me to see those teams continue to excel, continue to challenge these traditionally bigger clubs, because we need more of that. If these traditionally bigger clubs are going to try and sleepwalk their way into European football, we have to have clubs that keep them honest. We have to have a Brentford. We have to have a Brighton that are knocking on the door. We have to have an Everton that I mentioned in our preview show last week Friday, who are chomping at the bit and ready to step up if any of these traditionally big six teams slack off for a little bit or unsure about themselves. And it makes the league better. I think we don't have as many elite teams in the league this season, and whether or not teams can get there, time will tell. But arguably the only one is Arsenal, right? And then everyone else is trying to get there or catch up to them. But what we have seen from this league is that there are a lot of teams that are maybe considered in the middle of the Premier League that are stronger, that are settled, that are willing to dream big and go for it. And as long as that continues, I think it makes the race for European football for this season is going to be really, really exciting. What I do also want to mention with these two clubs, obviously their respective games. They had some impressive games from a Brentford perspective. They're coming up against the Tottenham side, who many obviously are calling them and having won the transfer window. A lot of them are Spurs fans, admittedly, but talking about the fact that they have won the transfer window and whether or not they still have won it after the transfer window closes, we will see. They get absolutely dismantled by a system team, a schematic team, a team that we've spoken about, who everyone knows their role and looks to execute their role as well as possible. And I'm reminded of there was I've forgotten his name. He was running for mayor of New York. And I know my mates are going to kill me for not remembering his name, but the story goes that they were asking him, how are you going to be able to defeat the incumbent who had been mayor for a number of years? And he basically said, all I've told my staff is you take care of your block. Don't worry about anything else. Don't worry about the bigger picture. If everyone takes care of their own block, that's all I ask of you. And obviously from that, it's the same approach from Brentford. Every single person knows their role. They're executing their role as best as they possibly can. And they don't even need to look to the right or the left to worry about whether or not the person on their side is also executing and trying to fulfill their role to their best abilities, because they know they are going to be. That's just the system and the culture that they've built there. And overall, because everyone is so focused on executing what they need to execute, it looks like a beautiful picture in the end. They end up going and winning a mayoral race that was never expected to win, right? For Tottenham in that game, we called it in our predictions on Friday that this was a game we thought Tottenham would lose. We were curious to see how Tottenham react to it. And obviously time will tell how they react to it. But I don't know if anyone expected it to be that decisive, that convincing, where Tottenham have a couple of injuries, especially, you look at the defensive backline, the four defenders, two of their main starters were not in the team. And that has been pointed out to me on Twitter by Tottenham fans. But my response to that was very simple. Those players aren't renowned for their defensive abilities. You look at a Pedro Porro, you look at a Mickey van der Ven, they're more brilliant going forward than necessarily defensively, in my opinion. I think their biggest assets are whether or not their biggest assets are how they can help build up play going forward, rather than necessarily them being stalwart defensive players. And Spurs have done well to recruit a lot of players that are going to help their build-up play and help their attack. And they obviously still got a few more players that they want to get into to help with that. But what they've not done, in my opinion, is bring in a lot of players that are just defensively astute, that love defending, that their first primary role is to want to defend and then worry about everything else afterwards. And we saw it in this game. The defensive structure, whether you bring in those two guys that weren't playing in Porro and Van der Ven, I don't think it fixes the defensive structure and the ethos of the team. And that's going to be the concern for Spurs. For me, the pathway for Spurs making top 4, top 5 this season is an attacking game that drags a poor defense into Champions League football. And if you're talking about top 4, top 5, an elite attack can drag a poor defense into top 4, top 5. An elite attack cannot drag a poor defense to a league title or even a title challenge. So that to me is the ceiling for Spurs, is having a phenomenal attack this season, and that gets you top 4, top 5. I can't see them going higher with the defense as it currently is. And we've got a chat here from Dob CRU. Thank you, Dob. You've been put on the wheel as well for the potential chance to win the £20 Amazon gift voucher. They say, hi, maybe you spoke about this, but how you see the top 6 at the end of the season. Sorry for my English. No worries there. I understand what you are asking. In terms of the top 6, so in terms of overall predictions, we are going to have our predictions week in 2 weeks' time, once the transfer window has closed, where we will give our official predictions. And I usually give my predictions after the transfer window closes, which is slightly weird because a lot of people, majority of people, most people give their predictions before a season starts. I just know how much a transfer can affect a team, whether it's a player coming in or a player going out. And I want all that information before I make my educated guess on who's going to be top six. But off the top of my head, without making it my official one, I'm looking at the likes of a Brighton and a Brentford challenging. I'm looking at an Everton challenging for those coveted spots. The obvious ones are Arsenal making it into the top six, Man City making it into the top six. I think Liverpool, as currently constructed, have a fight on their hands, but I think can eventually get into top six, but will have a fight on their hands. Obviously, they still feel they've got a lot of business to do. Man United, I think once a Belieber is fit, they're going to have more balance in their midfield. I think they're currently slightly ahead of Liverpool as the squads are currently constructed. But again, I expect Liverpool to do some business that takes them ahead of Man United. So I think the two that have separated themselves are Arsenal and Man City. I think Chelsea with Xabi Alonso are the team that's next. If you want to put a tier below those two, the two title contenders, I would put Chelsea as currently that third team in a tier on their own. I do think Sanchez is going to be someone that's going to hamper their abilities, and maybe we can jump into who can challenge Arsenal in this league. I think the problem for Chelsea is Sanchez on goal. I can't see him being good enough to bail them out of situations that you would expect a goalkeeper in title challenging situations to bail their team out. You look at the amount of brilliant saves Raya made for Arsenal last season. How important were they? You look at the likes of Alisson Becker, how important he's been for Liverpool. We've seen in the Premier League, we've seen in the Champions League, for example, with him. Donnarumma for Chelsea, he's made big saves. And before him, obviously, Edison was making big saves as well. I don't see Sanchez anywhere near any of those goalkeepers. And we saw the King goal. Wow, actually, both of Fulham's goals, now that I think about it. Sanchez is to blame largely for both of those goals. Just poor positioning, poor reactions, poor choice in where you're placing the ball after you punched it or trying to push it away. So that's the concern for me with Chelsea in terms of challenging. But I think in terms of making top four, they've got enough depth. They've got enough firepower to make top four. And then Liverpool, Man United, maybe in a tier slightly below that. Then there's the tier that's chasing, right? That's where I put a Tottenham, depending on their attacking prowess. I put a Brighton and a Brentford. I put an Everton in there as well. I think Aston Villa are in trouble this season. I mentioned it before the season started. I think Sunderland are in trouble. And all of this is as currently constructed, right? I think both of those teams are in trouble. I don't think they've brought in the depth required to handle European football and Premier League football as well. So yeah, those are kind of the teams I'm looking at the moment. As I said, I'll make it official in 2 weeks' time once the transfer window closes. But I do thank you for your question. And if anyone does have any questions in the chat, definitely shoot them my way, and I'll try and address them as best as I can. But I think I've buried the lead there with who challenges Arsenal. I think it's clear Arsenal, right, are the favorites. You look at the performance they gave on Friday night. There is that pressure of being the opening game. We've seen them in the past, an opening game against a promoted team, and they looked shaky. It's a different Arsenal now. It's a confident Arsenal. It's a team that now has that monkey off their back of having failed so many times to get over the hump and win that coveted Premier League title. They looked like a team that was playing with their chest puffed out, that were a settled team, composed team. And then you add a little spark on the left wing, right? Someone new coming into the team, bringing a bit more juice, a bit more energy. That's always good to see. And from an Arsenal perspective, if I'm them, I just go and empty the clip and get Alvarez in. Just go and psychologically bury the rest of the Premier League, because we all know if he comes in, that's going to cause serious problems. It makes Arsenal a very, very difficult team to catch, because already they were ahead of the entire Premier League in terms of squad depth last season. Then you look at the amount of teams that have made changes this season, whether it's personnel from transfers or changes from a managerial perspective, right? Half the league pretty much has changed managers. So a lot of teams are unsettled. If I'm Arsenal, this is my time to strike. This is my time to make that gap bigger to the rest of the trailing teams. And I kind of am jealous of that, because as a Liverpool fan, I thought there was an opportunity a couple of years ago for Liverpool to do that exact same thing, where City were kind of a bit unsure and Liverpool were the coveted team. There were big name players that wanted to come to Liverpool and Liverpool just never went for them. And I've shared the story before on when we were still an audio podcast, a couple of probably a couple of months back now. It would have been a couple of years back now, right? But where you've got people within Real Madrid absolutely flabbergasted by the opportunity Liverpool had in where their stature was in world football, and they were still acting like a team that wasn't one of the best clubs or one of the most coveted clubs in world football. And for Real Madrid, it showed them that Liverpool aren't, that's not what they're about. They're not about winning trophies consistently. And every team, from a utopia perspective, you want them to be aiming to win trophies. Obviously, Liverpool, the team that's won the most trophies in English football, it's blasphemy to say they're not in it to win trophies. But if you look at how they operate as a football club, Liverpool are trying to do, they're trying to position themselves to be in title races. They're not positioning themselves to go and be the team that everyone's chasing. And there's a big difference between those two things. Liverpool, you'll see, especially with their the way they operate in the transfer market, the big moves that Liverpool made last season are obviously one of the things everyone will bring up. But the reason they made those big moves was because, one, they had kept their powder dry for a couple of years. A lot of people forget that. Go and look at Liverpool's transfer business the years leading up to the big summer they had last year. They had kept their powder dry. And then also Liverpool under FSG, and this is all under the umbrella of FSG, right? And their approach to running sports franchises. Liverpool were ready for the next evolution of Liverpool. They were starting to move away from the Salahs, the Robos, the Van Dijks eventually, although some of those legacy players can stay on a bit longer, like an Alisson and a Van Dijk, right? But the Manes, the Firminos, these people, even the Luis Diaz's, these people were starting to transition out of the club. So Liverpool needed to bring in that next wave of young players. And maybe I can dive into a next topic that I want to talk of, especially with Wirtz and Isak. It doesn't feel like anyone's told Florian Wirtz that that's his role at Liverpool. That's meant to be his role at Liverpool. This is effectively his team, but he's not playing like that. He's not playing with that level of authority. He's almost deferring to the likes of a Szoboszlai, which obviously Szoboszlai, talented player and all of that stuff. But the financial investment Liverpool made on Florian Wirtz, the financial investment Liverpool made on Alexander Isak, shows us that they've given those two players the keys to the kingdom at Liverpool. They've effectively tried to replace what Mo Salah was bringing to the team by splitting it up into two players, because, as we all know, it's difficult to find a Mo Salah. It's difficult to replicate a Mo Salah. And even if you do find one like Liverpool did in Mo Salah, the odds of you getting another Mo Salah in your team straight after is nigh impossible. Okay, go and look at Mo Salah's metrics. In the season Liverpool won the league title, he was on track with what one of Lionel Messi's best seasons. So that's the level of player they were losing. You were never going to be able to replace Mo Salah with one person. So they split the responsibilities between two players. And I think the mainstream media has been correct to mention the fact that Florian Wirtz, for example, has been coddled. And we see here from Deselect1383. And if you're not on the wheel yet, you are going to be put on the wheel. Thank you for your comment. They say, hi, Wirtz just looks like he struggles with the physicality and speed of the Premier League to me. I agree. I agree with that. And I think a lot of it is he's too passive in his style of play. And if you're going to be like that, you have to have a lot more movement in front of you to almost bring that pass out of you. Because he's smart enough, he's talented enough, he's technical enough as a footballer. And you can see there are little sparks when he does 1-2s, he does flicks around the corners. He is a talented footballer, and I don't think anyone can deny that. Whether or not he can find himself within the Premier League is the question, right? And as you say, he's struggling with the physicality of the league. I think it's more the pace than necessarily the physicality. I don't know if you group them if you group them both into the same category, physicality, roping in the pace of the league. But that's the concern for me, is he's moving too slow in the Premier League, and he's not being helped by the lack of movement by others. And you look at the amount of or the intentionality with them bringing in Areola, and then you go and look at the intentionality with what they're trying to do in the transfer window. Go look at the type of wingers that Liverpool are targeting. Pacey wingers that run in behind, that a Florian Wirtz can pick passes into. Dominic Szoboszlai can't pick the type of passes that the wingers Liverpool are trying to bring in require. I mean, Dom is a talented footballer. He's more of one of those players that drives with the ball, right? Than necessarily picks intricate passes and can dismantle low blocks with clever football. Wirtz is that type of player, but he needs runners in and around him. And then from a defensive perspective, he obviously needs a lot more protection because he doesn't offer as much defensively, and he's obviously more an attacking thinking player than a defensive player. So Liverpool have a lot of work to do to sort out their defensive balance. And it's one of the reasons why I don't think they're a challenger for a title this season. I think the balance in midfield is off. I think they're missing a right back at this present point in time. I think the centre-back pairing of Van Dijk and Xhaka looks promising. But again, Xhaka is a young player. He's going to make mistakes. It comes with the territory. I think it's unfair to put too much pressure on him, but he does look good. I think the decision-making from Liverpool's fullbacks, and I think I mentioned this on Twitter, they have to be two of the least smartest fullbacks. Like a fullback pairing in the league, go in order of who are the smartest fullback pairings in their decision-making. Frimpong and Kirkers have to be bottom of that list or near the bottom of that list because they're terrible in their decision-making. So I don't know if Liverpool are a club that can challenge this season. I think the pathway to them challenging is unlocking Wirtz, is unlocking Isak. Whether or not they can do that, time will tell. I think it is fair, as mainstream media has been doing this past weekend, to start talking about how we take the kids' gloves off of these two players. They have to stop performing. I mean, Wirtz has already played 50 games for Liverpool. How much longer do you need to settle into the league, as D-Select was saying, to get up to speed with the physicality of the league or the pace of the league? The excuses have run out for me, in my opinion, for a likes of a Wirtz. And as I said, someone from Liverpool needs to sit them down and explain to them that this is their team and they need to start playing with that level of authority. At this point in time, it looks like Wirtz is playing second fiddle to Dominic Szoboszlai, who is a natural leader. He has been captain throughout his entire career, from youth level all the way up to international level, right? He's a hungry captain. He is going to become the Liverpool captain in the future when Van Dijk leaves. So there is that difficulty in, can I stamp my authority when the captain is playing kind of in a similar spaces as me? They got to figure that out. And for Isak, I think with any striker, confidence is a huge thing. Once one goal goes in, I wouldn't be surprised if they start flowing in abundance. But Liverpool do need to start creating more chances for him. So yeah, for me, Liverpool are not title challengers. I think they are in a battle to make top 4, top 5, and we'll see whether or not they're able to do something. Let's move on to what Dob CRU is saying here. They're saying, with so many clubs currently in transition, I think we might see a surprise champion this season, just like Leicester's historic run in 2015, 2016. I would be all on board with that. Obviously, as a Liverpool fan, that would suck if Liverpool aren't involved in that conversation and don't win a league title. But I have to be objective and call it like I see it. We're not in that conversation at this present point in time. Imagine a Brighton or a Brentford go and win it. I think that would be great for the league, because a lot of these clubs, as I said at the beginning of the podcast, are sleepwalking through the season. And we need clubs like a Brentford, like a Brighton, like an Everton, the 3 clubs I've pointed out as the 3 that I think are the ones that are going to cause an upset or are in the race to cause that upset for top 6, maybe even higher, Champions League, maybe even higher, as you're suggesting, and winning the league. I think it will be great for the Premier League, because it's a wake-up call for the big teams. It's a confidence booster for those teams. And especially if it's like a Brentford or a Brighton, I think they're so well run that they would be able to use that to catapult them into that tier, rather than, let's say, a Leicester, who I don't think were as well run, hit lightning in a bottle, won the league, and didn't know what to do with it. And we see how far they've fallen, right, within the tiers of English football. I think a Brighton or Brentford would be able to at least sustain a steady position of always being in that conversation for European football. And as I said, I think it would be great for the league, because I'm one of those people that if the big teams aren't taking things seriously, there needs to be other teams to challenge them. And I'm not one to put my fandom over Liverpool, for example, ahead of common sense when it comes to the business of football. Many times I even said, for example, I'll use this as an example. When Mo Salah was leaving Liverpool, I desperately wanted him to go to a Man City or an Arsenal, because I think they would have better used him this season than what Liverpool were using him as. And I think it would have shown Liverpool what they're missing. And I think it would have been exciting for the league. Unfortunately, he obviously leaves the Premier League and goes elsewhere. But, those type of things, as a Liverpool fan, obviously I get a lot of pushback by saying stuff like that. But for me, that's just the way I see the game. If you're not being serious about yourself as a football club, why should I be serious about you as a football club? Is effectively how I see it. So thank you so much for that chat. We've got an evening mate from double A1. You are on the wheel to potentially win that Amazon gift card. Welcome. Hi from DobCRU. Which club do your allegiances lie with? So I'm a Liverpool fan. Born into it. My dad is a Liverpool fan. My granddad is a Manchester United fan. My older brother's a Man United fan. My younger brother's a Man United fan. So I don't know where my dad went wrong there. My little sister is a Liverpool fan as well. And then my mom is a Chelsea fan. And that was largely from, she was a huge Didier Drogba fan. But yeah, so my allegiances lie with Liverpool. But as I said, I've been covering the Premier League as a whole for a couple of seasons now. This is episode 230 of A Tad Predictable. We've transitioned to YouTube, so it's not just audio anymore. We had 227 audio only podcasts. Now we're transitioning to YouTube as well, and we try to cover all the teams in the Premier League as best we can, because mainstream media does a great job of covering just the big teams. So if you do have questions on teams that maybe don't always get covered, do bring them in. If I don't know the answer straight away, I'll definitely go back and look for that answer, and I'll give it to you on the next episode. But yeah, we want the entire Premier League to be talked about and celebrated, because I think there's some really exciting teams going around. So yeah, Liverpool fan here, but Dobbs CRU saying Man U from 2006. You were cutting it close. That's an unfortunate time. So condolences, commiserations for you. You missed a generational time period where Man United were they were ruining my childhood. But yeah, welcome. Man United fans are always welcome. We've got Dobbs CRU saying Arsenal have had their set piece cheat code stripped away under the new VAR rules. So with regards to those VAR rules, the only thing I will say in terms of just being cautious about that is the fact that we know Premier League bring in new rules every single season. They don't always enforce them for the entire duration of a season. So I wouldn't pin your hopes on that completely, because we already know the referees in the Premier League, the standard needs to go up. And we've seen, the interpretation of handball, for example, at the beginning of the season ends up being very different to what it is in the middle of the season, ends up being very different to what it is at the end of the season, despite them clearly explaining what it should be at the beginning of the season. So the rules are there. If the referees enforce them the way they should be enforced, I do think it brings up questions for Arsenal. But as we saw in the opening game of the season, Arsenal aren't waiting for anything from that perspective. We saw some very clever set pieces from Arsenal, where they were playing it short, they were getting it to the edge of the box, they were quite aggressive with the number of players they were bringing forward. Yes, I agree. In terms of last season, the amount of wrestling Arsenal did, the amount of fouls Arsenal were committing in the box when they were attacking, and the amount of fouls Arsenal were committing in the box when they were defending corners, both of which were not being called by the referees, was frustrating for me as a football fan, was frustrating for me as a football purist. But you have to tip your cap off to Arsenal. Arsenal looked at the landscape. They said, if I commit a foul on 10 corners in a row, I'm going to call the refs bluff. I guarantee the ref's not going to blow the whistle every single time, all 10 times. So we're going to get away with 2, 3, maybe 4 times. And sometimes we're getting away with it more than that, right? At a higher percentage rate. And they called the refs bluffs, and the refs did nothing about it in that sense. Yes, the refs would call it every now and then, but Arsenal was saying, I'm going to foul every single time. It's on you as the referee to call it every single time. And the refs are too scared to do that. So hey, if you find a loophole, if you find something that works for you, exploit it. It's on the rule makers to enforce the rules or find a way to stop you. And we will see whether or not they can continue to do it the way they did it. But they showed in the opening game of the season that they've got other ways to be invented from corners. So that will be an interesting one to track for the entire season. And yeah, so I'm curious to see how they do from set pieces, but I'm not holding my breath on whether or not referees are going to enforce these new rules for the duration of the season. I wouldn't be surprised by October, November, it's back to what it was before, and the refs are just too scared to enforce it 10 times out of 10, if they are fouling 10 times out of 10. But we will see. We will see. Thank you for your question. Let's quickly jump to the Man United midfield that we saw. And it's also obviously a talking point where we celebrate Hull and what they achieved as a promoted team coming to the Premier League. I think all 3 promoted teams had tough assignments. You look at, from a Coventry perspective, playing the league champions away from home. I think for them, the important thing would be to not take too much from that game, not be too despondent from that game, not be too dejected by that game. You're literally playing the champions in their home ground, their first game since being crowned champions. It's a difficult game, and it went as expected. if anything, Arsenal looked very dominant. That game wasn't for Coventry. There are other games where they can try pick up points. You look at Ipswich with Gary O'Neill. How well would they be able to adapt to his style of football? I thought they were phenomenal from that perspective. And the wide players that they brought in are going to be so important for them this season. And we saw they've got these purple patch type players like an Enciso. They've got Fatawu coming in, and they've got these players who can be dangerous on their day, but their day isn't every week. So if they can somehow get at least one of those players to spark each game or every 2 games, I think they're going to be fine this season. Because defensively, from a midfield perspective, I think they've created a good baseline and structure. I think defense, maybe the fullbacks need an upgrade, but I think structurally they've set themselves up really well to make a fight for staying up. And obviously they did well to go and win the game against Sunderland late on. Jack Clark being another one of those exciting wingers that can on their day produce something special. But let's go back to Hull. We spoke about how their manager is very tactically astute manager, very pragmatic manager, but someone that knows his limitations and knows what he does well. They love to build up play from the left-hand side. We mentioned this in the preview podcast, and that was evident in the game. So obviously it was good to see that what we saw in preseason. Sorry, my battery's about to die on my laptop. I realized I hadn't plugged the charger in. There we go. So they were pretty impressive in preseason, and their build-up play largely comes from the left-hand side, and we saw that in this game. They were aggressive on the left-hand side. They were quick to get the ball into the box very early, and you've got a McBride who isn't shy attacking the ball. That's their bread and butter, is be defensively pragmatic and difficult to break down, get the ball out wide early, especially that left-hand side, look to get crosses into the box and cause problems that way. And we saw that time and time again against United. And then obviously they get the 2 set-piece goals, which is fantastic for them. For United, that midfield balance needs a lot of work. I've mentioned time and time again the age of players versus the amount of minutes in their legs are 2 different things. Tielemans has the amount of football in his legs of like a 35, 36, 37-year-old footballer. Yes, he's not in his 30s yet, but his legs are, in football years, he's 36, in my opinion. And we saw that in midfield. He can't go box to box like what they're expecting him to do. If you're going to play Tielemans, you're going to have to play a ball-winning defensive player behind him that is going to stamp out any counterattacks and be very good at that, right? Him in midfield with another midfielder that isn't a ball-winning midfielder is going to be problems for them. And Belieber obviously coming in looks to address that, but we saw Belieber was inconsistent last season. So what version of Belieber do they get? They get the Belieber from 2 seasons ago, great for Man United. They're off to the races. If they don't, it's going to be issues for them in midfield. I think defensively, they still have questions. I'm not a fan of their defensive line, and I'm shocked that they haven't looked to address that this season. Obviously, a couple of seasons back, they went heavy in attack. They've tried to fix their midfield this season. So maybe next summer, that's where they're going to try and fix the defense. But yeah, so Man United's defense is a concern for me from a backline perspective. I think a young goalkeeper looking to impress. I think he's improving time and time again. He's not the major issue. Midfield, they're trying to fix it. We'll see whether or not they have. But at present, with Belieber not in the team, they've got issues there. Then going forward, obviously, they have the firepower. Whether or not they can execute each game, that's the question they have to answer. And obviously the last promoted team would have been well, we've spoken about Ipswich, we've spoken about Hull, and we've spoken about Coventry. So we've covered them, which is great. We've covered the Man United midfield. Let's jump into the chat, see what you guys are talking about, and then I want to dive into, maybe we've got 15 minutes or so left, let's dive into some transfer talk. If you guys have any questions with regards to that as well. Double A1, sorry, he says it will be ironic if Alonso wins the league before Areola, as Liverpool had the chance to hire Xabi. So Liverpool did have the chance to hire Xabi Alonso. They had the chance to hire him before he went to Real Madrid, and went a different route. Basically, Arne Slot had less, or required less, turnover of the Liverpool squad. And it goes back to what I was saying earlier, where I was saying Liverpool try to do everything to make sure that they are challenging for top four, and with the upside challenging for a league title and potentially winning a league title. They don't necessarily operate to go after the league title. That's just the way FSG have operated. If they go and win the league title, phenomenal, great. But year after year, they leave their squad shorthanded, and that's just the way they operate. You get aggressive owners, you get owners that are more I don't want to say responsible, because is it being responsible, but they're more pragmatic about it. I think they're more than happy if Liverpool are making Champions League every season, and every third, fourth, fifth year Liverpool make a challenge for the league title. And for me as a Liverpool fan, I think the best they can do for us with the status of what Liverpool is give us a team and a coach that can challenge for a league title. I'm not saying win the league title every year. I'm not saying win the Champions League every year. I'm saying give us a manager that has the tools to win a league title or challenge for a league title. Give us a squad that has the tools to go and challenge for a league title. At presently constructed, Liverpool don't have that, which is why I'm disappointed heading into the season. It's why I was disappointed heading into last season. Despite all the spending, I think Liverpool have not spent the money in the right places. They've been calling for a defensive midfielder for years now. They've identified that they've needed a defensive midfielder. They went for Tchouameni. Tchouameni was had a tour of the Liverpool training center. Tchouameni is probably the transfer that broke me from a believing something is done perspective, because he was as done as could possibly be done without actually being done as a transfer, and he still ends up going to Real Madrid. So for me, once that happened, as closely as I have worked within football behind the scenes, that to me was so jarring that it kind of, it broke my heart in that sense, because I love Tchouameni and I was desperate for him to come to Liverpool. So ever since then, now when people say it's done, I'm like, okay, cool. I'll wait until it's official, because it doesn't get more official than what it was, in my opinion, from experience, right? They've gone for a Zubimendi, they've gone for a Moises Caicedo, all players that they tried to sign, all players that they've made bids for and failed to sign, and still don't have a defensive midfielder. So they recognize the problem, but they still haven't addressed it. Stuff like that really does irk me. But it would be ironic if Alonso goes and wins the league title before Areola, and it doesn't necessarily mean he has to do it this season, right? As long as he gets there first, that would be ironic. The manager I wanted, if you're curious, for Liverpool, probably about last year, October, was when I realized, okay, Slot doesn't know how to fix the issues that are at Liverpool, was Cesc Fabregas, a manager that Liverpool did have conversations with behind the scenes in around, I want to say late November, December. They actually spoke to Cesc's team to find out what will it take to get him on board, and then they kind of balked at what was being required and decided to just stick with Slot for the rest of the season, and then now Areola is in charge. But I would have loved Cesc Fabregas in. Dob CRU says, yeah, you're 100% right. Referees just interpret it however they want. The interpretation of the rules is the biggest issue right now. That's the thing, right? Can they be consistent? That's all we're asking for as fans. Just be consistent. And it's the same with VAR. The lack of transparency with VAR is probably what makes it worse. I don't think there's an issue with VAR as a concept. We see VAR in so many other sports, in rugby, in NFL, and basketball, in so many other sports. It works, right? Obviously, they're going to be, with everything, people are going to argue over certain things. The concept works. The issue with the Premier League is, and the English and football in general, is they're too scared to give us that transparency. The conversation between VAR and the referee should be open for all of us to hear, so that we can better understand how they're getting to these decisions. And if it becomes an open conversation, it also makes them have to think carefully about how they approach it, right? If the conversation is private, they can say whatever they want. They don't, we'll never know. Sometimes they release the audio, sometimes they don't. But if they make it transparent, okay, I'm seeing him lunging in. What are you seeing? And then VAR is explaining, okay, this is what we're seeing. Okay, can you slow it down for me? If we can be involved in that conversation just by hearing it, I think it would help a long way, not just in us learning how they're getting to their decisions, but it will also put pressure on them to be better when it comes to how they handle it. Double A1 says, nice crystal ball logo top right. Thank you very much. Double A1 also says, Robbo probably regretting going to Spurs now instead of Hull. Yeah, that would have been a fun return for him. I think I didn't know that Hull were in conversation for him. So that you're breaking news to me there. But yeah, that would have been a fun move. That could have been a really fun move. In terms of him going to Spurs, I think he helps them from a cultural perspective if they allow him to help them to learn how to be a winning team. But in terms of on the pitch performances, I think Robertson respectfully is past his best. And yeah, that's the case. Dob CRU says Brighton number one, Brighton first, Arsenal second, Cheese, I'm assuming that's Chelsea third, Tottenham fourth, Man United fifth, Man City sixth. I don't see Liverpool there, Dob CRU, so I'm a bit upset with you now, Jake. But that would be interesting. That would be interesting. As I said, Brighton winning it, I think, is there a club? They're the smartest club in European football. So is there a club more deserving from that perspective? I don't think there is. So that would be great for them if they can win it. As I said, it would be great for the league, because the Premier League is also a copycat league. We've seen time and time again with formations. Pep comes in, now everybody wants to play out the back. Klopp comes in now, so many teams want to press. It's a copycat league. If a Brighton win the Premier League with the way they approach things, with their very smart recruitment, with the way they're able to sell players and let players go that, it's time for them to go, and they're able to replace them, a lot of other clubs will start to try and copy that model, and it will make the league better. So I'm okay with that. Double A1 says, regarding Liverpool, are you on the Barcola train, or have you got an alternative not mentioned in the mainstream media? So in terms of Barcola, Liverpool, again, I've been scarred by Tchouaméni, right? So I forgive me for what I'm saying, but or rather, I'll say it with a caveat of the Tchouaméni situation has happened right before, and as I said, that's what broke me. Liverpool are confident. They don't want it to be publicly known that they're confident, but they are confident that the Barcola deal will get done. And as I say this, I hope someone is not breaking news, Fabrizio Romano, or someone saying that the deal is off. But from my understanding, from the last time I looked into it, as of this afternoon, Liverpool are confident that Barcola is going to go over the line, right? They're looking for Barcola +1 from an attacking perspective, right? So Barcola's coming in, they think they're going to get him in over the line. The other targets, the Minters, the Mbais, that's the second wide player they want to bring in. My understanding is that Barcola comes in, is not necessarily Barcola comes in, Gakpo comes out. It's Barcola comes in plus that other winger, then a Gakpo can leave. So that's kind of the plan for Liverpool at this present point in time. Last time of asking, they weren't going to be addressing the midfield. I know Curtis Jones left. His minutes are going to go to Trey Nyoni, who's an academy player, very talented footballer coming up the ranks. So Curtis Jones is not going to be replaced by a transfer. He's being replaced internally by promoting some of the academy players, right? So that's my understanding of Liverpool's situation at the present point in time. But we all know random things can happen. I mean, Liverpool signed Munoz out of nowhere. No one, not even the ITKs of the world, knew to even hint about him going to Liverpool. So these things can come out of left field. I'm not an ITK. I have no interest in being an ITK. I just happen to work behind the scenes within football. So you do get some information that I will share with you guys, not as an ITK, not to post on Twitter. My life's way too complicated to try and live that type of life. And also, my main issue is, especially with a lot of these ITKs, is they seem to know business about every single club. From my experience, that's impossible to do. You can't know the business of every club. You can't know the business of every single transfer. You can't know the behind the scenes of every single transfer. Take that how you want to take it. That's my view on it. That's my view on ITKs. Obviously, for some people, it's a great way to get all that information in one place, and I appreciate that. So more power to them. But yeah, that's how I see things from that perspective. We were going to go into transfers, but we've kind of answered some of them with the questions that you guys have given in. So thank you. And every one of you guys that have commented in the live comments, you are in the draw to win the Amazon gift card. As I mentioned on A Tad Predictable, for the month of August, we are giving away a £20 Amazon gift voucher at the end of the month, and getting on that wheel is pretty easy. If you join a live A Tad Predictable episode, like some of the people have done in the comment section, if you like the video and you comment, like for example, Double A1 has commented, Dob CRU have been commenting, you get entered onto the wheel. And on our episode next week, Monday, the last Monday of the month, we are then going to spin that wheel, and whoever it lands on is going to win that Amazon gift voucher, that £20 Amazon gift voucher. And if you're not able to watch the show live, then during the month of August, just go and look up any of the A Tad Predictable episodes that have happened this month, comment on those episodes. Hopefully it's a positive comment, and you'll be added onto the wheel. And as I said, we'll spin the wheel live next week, Monday. So definitely be here next week, Monday, if you know you're on the wheel or you're planning to be on the wheel, and we'll spin that live. And then we'll obviously put up the details for you to get in touch with us, and we can send that Amazon gift voucher to you with our pleasure. And we do thank you all that have been supporting the show. Double A1 says, I like your style, very sincere and thorough. You should do shows with fellow EPL Index alumni, Lola maybe. Yeah, I'm always happy to collaborate. And I don't think I may have been on the sister side, Anfield Index, on a show with Lola, maybe a post-match show once. Maybe not. I can't remember. But yeah, we'll definitely try and organize a show where we get to sit around and chat football with everyone. I think that is a very good idea. If you guys have any ideas of other people you want me to collab with, definitely let me know, and we'll look into that and try and make that a possibility. I think we can end there. I had wanted to dive into more transfers, but time is running out for us, as you guys can see. Dob CRU mentions, sorry, but if a player throws the captain's armband to the ground during a match, it's a clear sign of dressing room trouble. Dob CRU, can you elaborate on who you're talking about with regards to the throwing the armband? I might have missed that. And then I'll be able to address that. But in the meantime, whilst Dob CRU is getting his thoughts together, if he does want to elaborate on that, I'm just going to say that I'll do my plugs, and then we can come back to him if he does mention. So I do want to implore you all to check out all of the content on EPLindex.com. It is obviously our website where you can get everything from match previews, post-match breakdowns, player ratings, especially during this busy end of the transfer window. You can get all the transfer news that you could wish for. Then there's also a Substack for EPL Index. It's called It Was Always Football. And you get deeper tactical writing and kind of long form analysis on that. Go and tune in daily to the Two Footer podcast with Dave Hendrick, where he dissects the hottest topics in football. On Sunday evenings, we have the Final Whistle podcast with Nina and Ben, and they recap what happened on the weekend. So that's Sunday evenings. Then, as mentioned by AA1, we've got more shows that have been brought onto EPL Index as we've come into YouTube. So we've added brand new shows to the network, including Goal Difference with Lola and Scarlett, which is kind of like a modern day Premier League show where they're bringing really incredible insight. It's a Liverpool fan, an Arsenal fan. They are twins, and they basically chop it up, kind of give each other stick on their two teams, and then talk about the league overall as well. So that's always a fun show. And then I've mentioned before, my dad coined the phrase "making money makes sense." And he actually hosted a TV show called Making Money Makes Sense with back in the day. And he tried to make money make sense, right? He tried to make banking easier for people to understand and digest. And that was his show. Mo Chatra does something very similar from a football finances perspective. He's got his show making it's Mo Chatra. It's called Money Talks, and he breaks down all of the football finance stuff that you guys want to hear and want to, if you're interested, want to dive into and all of that stuff. He was on Anfield Index, so he was just focusing on Liverpool finances, but now he's come on board at EPL Index. He's going to be doing the entire league and focusing on football finances from that perspective. It's a great show if you guys want to figure out how this kind of stuff works from the business side of things for these football clubs. I do highly recommend it. Also, finally, every weekday morning, Wake Up with Dave Davis on the News Round show, where you guys will be able to catch up on everything that you may have missed overnight regarding the English Premier League. Follow this show on Twitter and Blue Sky at A Tad Predictable, and keep up with at EPL Index for real-time updates. Make sure you subscribe to the EPL Index YouTube channel. Obviously, you've seen the ticker that's been going on the screen. Definitely smash that like button. We do appreciate each and every one of you that have done it so far. Subscribe to the EPL Index channel on YouTube, and then turn that bell on for notifications. That makes sure that you guys don't miss out on any shows. For our audio listeners, our truthers that have been there, the day ones, we've not forgotten about you. So we still got all of our audio feeds. Subscribe to EPL Index on your podcast feeds, wherever you get your podcasts. We still have our audio podcasts going out. And as I said, that's how I started this show. It was audio only, 227 episodes. We're now 230 episodes in, 3 episodes on YouTube. So yeah, transition for all of us, but we do appreciate our audio listeners, and we'll never forget you guys. Let's jump back into DobCRU, and then we'll head off. I know there's another one there from AA1. We'll talk about that just now as well, and then we can sign off and send you guys on your way. DobCRU says this incident happened in Liverpool's pre-season friendly against Wrexham 1-0 during their US tour in. Oh, that was the Curtis Jones situation. So yeah, the unfortunate thing. I'll always say this about incidents like that. I agree, as you say, that I think you said, sorry, but if a player throws the captain's armband to the ground during a match, it's a clear sign of dressing room trouble. I think Curtis Jones had both feet out the door pretty much. He had one foot out the door. He knew he was leaving this summer. I think there were frustrations with how long it was taking. I think he's felt disrespected, and I'm not speaking on his behalf. Let me phrase it this way. It feels like he's been disrespected by the club. It feels like he feels disrespected by the club, and that goes all the way from the contract negotiations or the lack thereof, so to speak, all the way through to how his transfer has been handled going to Inter Milan. I think those frustrations boiled over for him, and it got to a breaking point. Unfortunately for him, and I usually say this when let's say players fight, like remember when Salah and Mane were arguing. Unfortunately for him, it happened in front of cameras in a game. in training, there are a lot of fights. There are a lot of fights that happen in training. I thank God that we don't, as fans, see them, because that would be talked about more often, right? But so arguments happen. These are human beings. These are elite athletes that are competing at the highest level. Things get heated, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if this is something that was transferred from the training ground. You look at all the issues with his transfer and not happening, and then this maybe being the final nail in the coffin to say, I'm even being disrespected in a friendly where I'm not getting the armband. Look, he didn't handle it the right way, and it's no way to act. But as I said, these type of things do happen actually in training quite a lot in terms of player bust-ups and fights and all of that stuff. We don't always they're not always reported. A lot of it is protected behind the scenes. But yeah, that is not an incident that you want to see as a fan. Then lastly, this will be our last one from AA1. They say, random question of interest, cricket or rugby? So for me, it would be rugby. Just a history on me. I actually, when I was very young, I was in a cricket academy, but I've always been more talented as a rugby player. Played it all the way through to university as well. Then I ruptured my Achilles tendon, as happens with all people, right? People get injured, stuff like that. Yeah, but in terms of watching, again, I prefer watching rugby over cricket. Cricket, I have to watch cricket live. I struggle to watch cricket on TV. If I'm going to watch cricket, I have to go watch it live in the stadium. Then I can stomach it a bit better. I struggle to put it on the TV and watch it. I end up doing other stuff and I end up losing track of things. Rugby, yeah, I've been watching rugby all my life. I played rugby competitively for a lot of my life. So that kind of bleeds into it. So yeah, hope that addresses that question. But yeah, thank you all for coming on and joining us in the chat, and those that are listening as well. I do appreciate it. I've been Tadiwa Chinakira. You can find me on my deselect 1383 says rugby's brutal, fair play. Yeah, it is. It is brutal. And maybe next episode I'll tell you guys the story of me playing a rugby game very recently, and it was because I got challenged and you know, someone said, oh, did you play rugby? And I ended up actually playing in a rugby game quite recently. But I'll tell you guys that next show. We got to head off. Let me do my sign off, and then next episode, our next episode, by the way, great segue there, is on Friday. We're going to be doing our previews for the weekend action, and then we'll be back again next week, Monday, at 10 o'clock. 10 p.m. every Monday. We're going to be here live. Join us. And then on Fridays, it's at 2 p.m. So Fridays, 2 p.m. Catch the show then. Actually, I'll tell the rugby story next week, Monday, is what I'll do. Next week, Monday, when we do our wheel spin, I'll tell the rugby story there. If I don't remember, please do remind me, and then I'll tell it then. But then, yeah, the Friday show is quite busy, so let me keep it away from there. I've been Tadiwa Chinakira. You can find me on my Twitter handle at TadPredicts, which is also my Blue Sky handle. Huge thank you to Obi Semenya and Jody for our podcast intro. Obi's at John Empire SA and Jody's at Spursy141. Our producer behind the glass, Mr. Ben Pescott. He's at Ben Pescott _ on Twitter. I will be back, as I said, on Friday at 2 p.m. where we preview game week 2. And then next week, Monday, we'll be back 10 p.m. same time. But as I said, thank you so much for joining us. And remember, Chisingaperi, Chinoshura.
Tottenham are safe. Spurs stay up. Oh, Reed! Where on earth did he find that one from? Forward through for Krupi. Chance here! Salah for Liverpool. And there finally is the goal. Arsenal have won this game. Gabriel's header.
In 2026, the champions are the Arsenal.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, EPL Index proudly brings to you the best prediction podcast in the world. A Tad Predictable. With your host, Tadiwa Chanakira.